Good morning. We're about to get started, so if you'd like to find your table. If you don't know which table you're supposed to sit at, there's a number on your name tag. If you don't have a name tag, we can assist with that. But we'll get started in about 2 minutes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. First of all, I am Binh Nguyen, the president of the Vietnamese Catholic community in South Australia here. And I'd like, on behalf of the whole community, to welcome you all to our center, and especially to attend one of the big events of our archdiocese this morning. So welcome everyone. And secondly, a bit of things about the housekeeping. The toilet is on your right and on my left, right, through the door. And the lady, I think they are on your left, and then the boy or the man, let's say, on your right. In case of emergency, and then we do have a lot of emergency exit through, let's say, all the glass door. 2 over here, and the big one at your back, and one on your right, and through, let's say, the kitchen as well. And in terms of the coffee and tea and water, and you are welcome, to go and grab your tea and coffee. The coffee cart is available around the roundabout, and the tea and coffee station, they are at the kitchen on your right, and the water is on the tables, and they are available throughout, let's say, the morning. And also one of the other things that is our beautiful church is open and welcome anyone at any time if you like to have a look or have a prayer, and you are more than welcome to come to our church, let's say next door. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone, and it's my privilege to welcome all of us here together as the faithful gather for such an important event, really, in the life of the church here in South Australia. It's the launch of the document, Being Church Together. In case there are any of you who are just not quite sure why you're here, that's why you're here today. But we all know that a document, no matter how good it is, and this document is very, very good, no matter how good it is, it remains a document unless we do something with it, because we are what makes it live in who we are and in what we do with that document. And so the process today is going to explore that document, do some storytelling about how it came into being, and then there's going to be some good talk amongst us, a real honouring of the sensus fidei here in the gathering of the faithful and the wisdom of all the faithful as we lean into each other and listen to each other's experience, listen to each other's role and position and what that looks like and feels like each and every day. So it will be a very good day. It's a great process. And without further ado, let's begin as we always do, framed in prayer. And so I invite Sarah, Director of the Pastoral Services team in the Archdiocese here, to now lead us in prayer.
And before we start our prayer, I acknowledge that we meet on the lands of the Kaurna people and we respect their cultural heritage, both past, present and into the future. So I ask you to join me in the name of the Father, the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Loving and merciful God, you are indeed the giver of good gifts. We ask your blessing on this gathering today. Help us recognise and celebrate the diversity of our gifts of one another, so that each of our shared communities might better reflect your love and mercy. For the transformation of the world, we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
A reading from the first letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians. Now, there are varieties of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are varieties of services, but the same Lord. And there are varieties of activities, but it is the same God who activates all of them in everyone. To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. To one is given through the Spirit the utterance of wisdom, and to another the utterance of knowledge according to the same Spirit. To another, faith by the same Spirit. To another, gifts of healing by the one Spirit. To another, the working of miracles. To another, prophecy. To another, the discernment of spirits. To another, various kinds of tongues. To another, the interpretation of tongues. All these are activated by one and the same Spirit, who allots to each one individually, just as the Spirit chooses. For just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. The word of the Lord.
The parish is the centre of the Christian community. More than a place, the parish is people, a family. Like any family, the parish community encompasses the dynamics of family life, including times of unity and joy, as well as dysfunction and challenge. As members of the family in Christ, the parish worshipping community and the school community are called to live in relationship of love and service with one another and in the mission to the world. I invite you to join me in praying the vision for parish and school being church together. We'll pray each line slowly and pause briefly after each line. In each local place, the people of God, inspired by Jesus and empowered by the Spirit, share in the mission of God by living and proclaiming the gospel as the one body of Christ with many parts, as a community of communities, a communion, gifted with mutual, complementary and distinct roles, in which each part is in life-giving relationship with the others, in their own place and in this way. The faith community which is gathered in and sent from the Sunday Eucharist, and the school community are church together, a parish together, with and for children's families, the poor and the world. Amen.
Thank you, Sarah. It's my pleasure now to introduce to you Monica Conway, who actually needs no introduction, I don't think, to any one of you. Monica's been previously Assistant Director of Catholic Identity and Mission, and then on the back of 17 years in the Catholic Education Office. Monica is now the inaugural Chair of the Archdiocesan Pastoral Council for the Archdiocese of Adelaide, Monica was part of the plenary council and she's been highly and strongly engaged in the assembly process. Monica is one of us. So I invite Monica to share some reflection on the importance of this moment for us and this document for us. Thanks, Monica.
So thank you, Jill. And I'd just like to say it really is wonderful to be with you all this morning, and especially to be here at the launch of the Being Church Together pastoral statement. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate all those who've brought this statement to us today, because I know it's a result of much discussion and discernment, and its development in itself is a powerful symbol of what it promotes. For me, Being Church Together recognises our individual and collective responsibility for the mission of God in this place at this time. Now, I speak today as someone who has some experience of parish-school relationships in all their complexity, joy, and sometimes frustration. Based on my experience working in schools, the Catholic Education Office, parish pastoral councils, and indeed in my present role as the chair of the Adelaide Diocesan Pastoral Council, I'd have to say, though, my overall observation would be that although these relationships have their ups and downs, as do all relationships, I really believe there's a genuine desire on the part of school leaders and parish leaders to make these relationships positive and productive. And I think that's a really good place to start. Now, I wasn't directly involved in the development of the first Being Church Together working document. However, I do know that it was initiated after a conversation between Michael Vial in the Catholic Education Office and Deacon Tim Gruhl in response to visits that Tim and his team were making to school boards as part of the Renewing Parish initiative. So those seeds were strong and grew strongly, but some time has passed since that original working document was developed. But not only time, I think notably, there's been some significant things happening since 2018 in the Australian Catholic Church and in the two dioceses in South Australia. The listening and dialogue phase leading up to the plenary council meant that many people in our parishes and schools made submissions that spoke about their experience and, probably more importantly, their hopes and dreams for the Church in Australia. Added to this information is all of the data that was gathered in diocesan assemblies and many other forums over that time. I was really struck when I was reading the newly published Being Church Together pastoral statement how many of the themes from the plenary council and assemblies are reflected in the document. In October this year, the first session of the Synod on Synodality was held in Rome, and our Archbishop Pat was one of the bishops who attended. But in preparation for the Synod, 3 priority issues for a synodal church were named. Communion, communion that radiates. Mission, more specifically, co-responsibility in mission. And participation, governance and authority. I think co-responsibility in mission is at the heart of quality school-parish relationships. It's when we ask ourselves how, in our local context, we can better share gifts and tasks in the service of the gospel. So with all of the feedback collected over the past years as part of the plenary council, diocesan, regional and parish assemblies and the synod, we have heard a really strong desire to be a church that is more welcoming, more inclusive and mission-focused. And if we're going to respond to those aspirations that we've heard from many, then I'm sure you will agree that the quality of our relationships has to be at the centre of our thinking. I know a vision of a church that is more welcoming, inclusive and responsible in mission is what has really inspired me in my role as the chair of the Diocesan Pastoral Council, and I know it inspires us as a group. And it's great to see so many members of the DPC here today. We all know that the parish-school relationship is developed and nourished through the leadership relationships. Leadership relationships that are characterised by collaboration and co-responsibility through a focus on mission, dialogue, radical hospitality and deep listening. They're the relationships that have the capacity to enrich our communities in significant ways. So again, I'd like to commend this pastoral statement to you, and I really look forward to seeing parish-school relationships flourish under its guidance, but more importantly, under your care. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Monica. My name is Peter Beer. I am the Assistant Director of Pastoral Life and Mission for the Archdiocese of Adelaide, and alongside Julian.
Good morning. My name's Julian Kluge. I work in the Catholic Identity and Mission team at Catholic Education South Australia. Peter and I it was interesting when we were sitting down looking at what we might do at the beginning of today. We thought this is an inspiration for dialogue and seeing relationships afresh. And full disclosure, Peter and I have known each other, I think, for 7 or 8 years now. We've worked in the same team. We have a collegial friendship. I suspect at times it goes beyond that. We know each other's families and stories. So one of the things when we sat at this beginning point of this was, we need to look afresh. We need to park some of the assumptions that we know of the other in our particular roles, and we need to reinvigorate how we look at relationships might be articulated in new and fresh ways. So we thought we might model a conversation which hasn't been scripted.
Barely prepared.
Which hasn't been scripted, because that's the best way to do that, so that it's natural. About where we began with this process of, if we were renewing this particular document, what are the bits that stand? And what are the bits that might need a refresh because of the time that's passed and because of the new context that we're in? So, Peter, I think you were going to speak a little bit about the need for that refresh.
Right. So how many of you would have been familiar with the working document when it was published, maybe 2018, 2019? You were great. All right. So maybe about half the room. When the time came, just recently, it was only last year really, that the document was brought up again in the Catholic Identity and Mission Standing Committee that we should publish this. And so Julian and Jill brought that to Sarah and I and said, all right, should we do this? Should we go forward with this? What do we need to do to move this forward? And the four of us sat down, along with Deacon Tim Gruel, who unfortunately is unwell today and couldn't be here with us. And we started looking at the document, and we realized a lot has changed since 2019. And some of the realities of not only what's happening in our parish and school lives, but across the world, and as Jill and Monica both mentioned, this whole synodal process that we've been embarking on, this journeying, walking together on the way, has been inspirational, but also needed to be reflected in more intentional ways in the language throughout the document. And so we went really piece by piece through the whole thing and reflecting prayerfully together about what should remain, and a lot of it remained, but there were just little nuances here and there, things that needed to be updated. And one of the things that we did that was really a complete overhaul was there was a section that was examples of good practice. And they were great examples, and really fine examples of what parishes and schools were doing currently to foster the relationship and to build that relationship together. But what was missing was a process for how to engage with one another in making those principles that are named in the document a reality and an ongoing reality, not just a list of great things people are doing that we can be inspired by, but an opportunity for each one of us to engage in dialogue and in developing good practice together.
Peter, I remember sitting in your office in Wakefield Street, probably over a year ago now, when we started looking at that section of examples of good practice. And as you named, these were examples of hospitality, of being together, of sharing story. But they were a list of things to be done. And one of the things in our dialogue was we sat very carefully, and we actually intentionally spent a fair bit of time getting to know each other's roles and the particular people and communities that we were each serving. And we had a charter to serve. And one of the things that we realised was that what we needed to do with whatever this section ended up looking like was to step back from that and place ourselves in the position of the other, in context, which is why we moved away from examples of good practice towards this section where we invested most of our energy. How do we activate principles of good practice for an ongoing dialogue so that we're continually refreshing, imagining who's in front of us, imagining who's not with us, the people that have chosen maybe to be absent, or those that we don't even know at this point in time. And so we spent a lot of time on that. And one of the things I remember really clearly that was really powerful in this process was the consideration of sharing story of people in our communities. What have been the stories for people from my perspective, from my role, in a school community that may have felt a discomfort with being in a place of church, and vice versa from Peter's perspective? Where might parishioners feel some hesitancy about crossing that boundary? Because if we don't know the story of place, and this is really grounded very deeply in relationship, and relationship is built incrementally, and trust is built incrementally, so you need to know each other more deeply. And we're hoping that you'll see in the process today that we've tried to provide opportunities to model that.
Julian, when we were having those conversations in my office, when you get lost in the story and you get lost in the conversation.
Sorry about that.
Hours went by.
Sorry about that. They did, Jill.
Yeah, we had things to do, but when you are engaged in a relationship and in a dialogue that's meaningful and deep, you let the other things pass away, those things that might be important on the periphery. And we really, hours upon hours engaging in the reflection on these good practices and activating the principles for good practices. And I think in that, this document became much more than a statement, and it inspired for both of us opportunities to expand our horizons and to look beyond our immediate areas of focus and to see what might be possible for us, not just our own relationship, but the relationship that we all have to share together in going forward.
Yeah, and I think in noting that, one of the really important things is that we learnt is that while we knew each other, we had to take time to hear the stories from our communities, the stories of new parents to schools, Year 12 students, a staff member that maybe has been there a very long time, a staff member that's in their first week, a parishioner that's been in a community for a long time or someone that's just moved into. We needed to hear those stories. And what that alerted us to really clearly, that the beauty in this document sits in the conversations that emanate from this area of activating principles of good practice, but also that we need to invest ongoing time in this. Sometimes we see a document like this and, it's got 6 principles and it's got 5 steps. We'll do that in our next meeting, or we'll do that over the next 10 weeks. And our feeling was you might just land in one of these areas and say, we actually need to spend a good 12 months here, but we need to start with knowing the story. And then, what's our intention for the people in our communities? What would we hope and wish for them? And then, how do we go about the aspiration of that realisation?
Should we open the document?
We probably should.
Okay. This is why you're here. So we're going to just step through the first part of the document and kind of, we'll spend a little bit of time on it, but we're going to kind of breeze through it in the next 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, so our intention was, we're not going to, and you'll all be really thankful about this, every word in the document is not on a PowerPoint slide and we're not going to read through it. But we have highlighted some bits that we thought were really important to name. And so in the preface on page 4, just wanted to read and allow us to hear before we move later into a process of dialogue. This document is offered as a stimulus to support and enhance the relationship between the parish and the Catholic school as they participate in the life and mission of the church and its ongoing renewal. Following the initial request from Archdiocesan leadership, this document was developed by a collaboration between Catholic Education South Australia, the Archdiocese of Adelaide and the Diocese of Port Pirie, and which involved consultation via visitation with school and parish communities.
Now, we'd like to invite you on your own for the next 5 minutes or so, just to take a look at that page 5, Context and Theology, Challenging Gift. And what we'd like you to do is to pay attention to what is stirring in you, what's happening, what are you seeing in your own experience as you read this, and what might this be calling you to, what challenge might this be calling you to address in the coming future, I guess, the ongoing future. So I'll give you 5 minutes just to read through this on your own.
And as you move towards having some engagement with that section, we thought it was really important just to highlight an element of that. As the church seeks to review and renew itself, each and every part of the broader parish, including the parish worshipping community and parish school community, is called to appreciate with openness and cooperation the way in which these communities give expression to the mission of the church. The church continues to challenge itself to go to the peripheries. After all, children and families at these peripheries often present in Catholic schools. In this way, Catholic schools are a gift to the fundamental mission of the church. With the periphery near and in the midst of the parish, the challenge is to open the church door, to step out, to be with, and to welcome.
So if you move over to page 8, there's an image. This image was originally designed by the first writing team. But what we'd like, we're not going to try to explain it. What I'd like you to do is to have a conversation about it at your table. What do you see? There might be some problems you see with it. There might be some new ideas that you see in it. What do you see in this image as it is attempting to describe the relationship of the parish worshiping community and the parish school community as parish in total? So you can do that at your tables. So significant. So I put
That's good. Yeah.
And the young guy, he's in the parish, just arrived.
Okay.
That's how he's learning.
It's interesting. I think he was somewhere of this. I always think it's in my head. I don't know this part of the city. I tend to be going further out. I was thinking it would be an hour. I think it's more important for this. I'm imagining much more around this. I don't know if one was hard. Okay. You know what? Tend to leave. 6 seconds and if it didn't happen, then he'd have to kill all his wife. He'd have to place it to his head. And it was synchronised with his watch. There's some cracking stories about it. I do miss him and his mind and working with him, but there are days when I think, how much will this take with him? You're imagining it.
Paid for a house 2 years ago is laughable.
Thanks, everyone. We might draw back together. This is not... I want you to hold that thought of that conversation. Thanks, James. I really appreciate your support there. We'd like you to hold that thought of that conversation because there's going to be lots of opportunities to continue that as we move throughout the morning. What we did just want to point to in terms of that understanding of the relationship between two very contextually different and contextually similar communities that can be fluid and evolving is just on page 6 and 7 there are some unpacking of the terminology of what we mean by the parish, by the school and the parish-school relationship. Now, we're going to point you towards these. We're not going to read them out. But there's something really important about these is parking the assumption that we have about what a community is and who a community is really important. It's important to spend some time with that terminology and come to an agreement on this language and recognise the fullness of what they portray in evolving relationship. Having that agreement allows us to then be able to understand the other and speak in a really dialogical way.
And that dialogue can be underpinned by shared principles. So these principles begin on page 10. We're just going to name these because there's a lot of unpacking that we'd like you to do together when you go home with these principles. So the first principle, there's an acknowledgement of sharing together. Again, this was written just as the synodal language was beginning, that journeying together. So there is an acknowledgement of sharing together the mission of God through the mission of the church to proclaim the gospel for all people, and in particular to children and families through this dynamic relationship. There's a mutual respect for the support of the complementary and distinctive roles within the parish, of the parish worshiping community, and the school community. There is a shared engagement of being together. Not just existing side by side, but being together. There's a shared engagement in action. There's effective communication between the parish and school communities. There is cooperative, collaborative, and shared leadership which supports the parish-school relationship, shared mission, and unique roles. And finally, there is goodwill, generosity, and propriety regarding the sharing of resources in appropriate ways. So before we go any further, looking through the document, at this point, we'd like to invite Archbishop Pat to come and to share his thoughts and to speak with us. I don't know, about whatever you want to talk to us about, Archbishop, but the stage is yours. So please join me in welcoming Archbishop Pat.
Good morning, everyone. Many are the gifts of Rome, including a cold. My dear sisters and brothers in Christ, fellow pilgrims, I'm delighted that I can be here today, and I once again welcome you because this is important. And I do pass on greetings from Bishop Karol Kulczycki and the priests of the Port Pirie Diocese to our gathering today, because this is very much a joint venture. During the last month of October, I've had this extraordinary experience of being at the Synod, but also uncovering the things that are foundational. And for me, one of the overarching narratives of the month in Rome was a sense of the parable of the Good Samaritan and how appropriate that is as both a theological and scriptural underpinning of all that we are, but also the different paths that can happen in our world today. Little wonder that Pope Francis in Fratelli Tutti has used that as the golden thread to describe what being a disciple in our world means today. It's often the unexpected places that bring life. The Samaritan was not expected to do what he did, but went beyond and above the call that he was given. So I'm trying to ground my own experience in that parable, because there can be harsh responses to life, and we see that each and every day, sadly. Compassion seems to be put to the side rather than hope, which is often replaced these days by fear. But that is not who we are. I feel it's important for us to understand the history of Catholic education in Australia. It was started by lay people, and for a long time run by the religious congregations in such heroic ways and places. Their story needs to be told as well. But in my experience, it was this dynamic relationship between parish and school that is our foundational story. And at a time when there was no government funding of any kind, it was the parishes who established and sustained the Catholic education system in Australia. This we ought never forget. And I'd like to pay particular tribute today to the many religious men and women who have given their very lives, not only because they believed in the dignity of each human being which can be raised up by education, but also because they believed in God's dream of connecting people as disciples of Christ and leading them closer to God and the service of one another. It gave them an ability to look at the world, a framework to deal with all the inconsistencies and ambiguities of life that didn't simply result in fear, but led them to hope. It's important to say, and this was reinforced for me by being in Rome, that what we have in Australia is unique, when it comes to Catholic education. It just simply does not exist anywhere in the world as it does here. We need to cherish, celebrate, and build on that extraordinary thing. Nowhere else has our experience. Thus, what we're doing today cultivates, supports, affirms all of the extraordinary work that has been done by so many people, often in heroic circumstances, for the love of God, for the love of people, but they were driven by something that was deep, something that was passionate, an overused word these days. It's easy these days to be an armchair critic from afar, but not to engage in this extraordinary gem which helps to describe the Australian story, and as South Australia has a particular leading role in all of that, is almost to sort of cut our nose off to spite our face. Open our eyes and see what we have amongst us, and to treasure that, because it is, in many ways, the envy of other places. What we have been able to do, and again, through the dedication and life of so many religious men and women, we are called to do that same mission, slightly different way, using the wonderful joy of technology and all the other experiences of the human sciences, but because part of our core experience is that we're good with people. We understand the human person. We know we want to challenge each person to be and assume their dignity as sons and daughters of God, and to make a difference in our world. I think it's really important for us in this document to understand it's come not from just nowhere, but it comes from a very deep place within the Australian Catholic psyche, that we want to do this together. This is part of our DNA. We're good at actually doing it. We just haven't articulated it in terms of the 21st century as well. That ends today because I think we do now. Being church together, as we've heard, has had several iterations. And again, I would like to thank all those who over the last especially 5 years, not only for this edition, but for the idea and the desire to make sure that this is intentional, that we want to be church together. The one we have today, and that I'm happy to launch today, takes up the constant theme that I would have heard at our diocesan assemblies and lots of other gatherings. How do we share the gift of faith with our families and children? It's not just being church together, is simply not just parish and school, but it's also as the document refers to, the domestic church, which is the first crucible where all of these things happen. When I think of my own experience of faith, it wasn't the parish, it wasn't the school where I sampled something of what it means to be a disciple. It was within my family. What the school was able to do was to amplify that. What the parish was able to do was to amplify that and connect us into the bigger story. But the thing that was in hand's distance was the gift of family. Now, our experience of family has changed widely. We have to respond to that, but there is a wonderful role which is acknowledged in this document as well. The part of this partnership is that domestic church, the one that's in hands rich. And so often, especially in the last few years and through our plenary council, we've heard about the importance of formation. This is a formational document. but helping to give our families a sense of confidence that they too have a role in sharing the gift of faith is also part of this document. How do we share the gift of faith is one of the constant echoes of all of the conversations we've had in parishes, in schools, our diocesan assemblies. This is not the magic bullet that says, do this and everything will be well. But it is a foundational plank upon which we can build, because it gives us a trajectory. It gives us a way forward on which we need to build together to bring about the kingdom of God. As you can see, apart from the font, it's got sound theological and pastoral foundations that we need to reflect on, as we were just talking about just a moment ago. These are not just buzzwords, but these are the deep foundations and strong ones from our Catholic heritage of 2,000 years that need to be explored and understood. The three great themes of the Synod of communion, participation and mission, to me are key to understanding of what it means to be church together, because we don't have this inward-looking element to us. We are here to serve and, in that sense, be an instrument of hope to our world. We haven't always been able to do that as well, and there are some that would lead us away from that. But that is not who we are. This document is an invitation to each and every one of us, not to be simply a document, but it's something to be lived. Is it perfect? Of course not. It always needs to be incarnated in the various experiences we have, and if we think we have diversity in our archdiocese, try going to a synod. It just reminds you of how extraordinary diverse the Catholic Church is, and that is something we celebrate. It's not as monolithic as some people like to say. It is a living tradition, and I think that's what we rejoiced in, especially at the Synod. It's not just something that's been packaged up way back when, but it is something that we are engaged in a living way. Of course, this requires certain attitudes, a commitment to continue, and in some cases restart, and begin conversations in a new and effective way for the relationship we hope to continue to deepen and cherish. We want to make better what already is good. This is not a crisis document. This is giving shape to direction to what already is there. I know we have amongst us a couple of people that have only arrived literally last week, and others who have been on the road for many years. But sometimes when we do something together, we can reimagine, we can reinvigorate what we already know and give life to a new experience of what it is that God is amongst us. Of course, we've seen the diagram, and we've prayed together that extraordinary vision. But each of us need to bring that alive. It can't simply be a lovely statement, and it's going to look different in each place. That's what the Incarnation reminds us of. Someone was trying to count up the number of images of the Blessed Virgin Mary that there are in the world. And I think they stopped counting at 1,500. But it reminds me of the extraordinary variety, but also that great incarnational aspect of what our faith is all about. It's got to look good for us. It's got to be able to be relatable for us. Not something, a far distant dream, but something very localized, and yet something part of the whole, according to the whole, the Catholos. I know there have already been wonderful experiences of what this might be. I know one parish where the Parish Pastoral Council has set up regular meetings with, say, the local school board to say, how can we work together? How can we be the face of God to so many people whose lives are torn in so many different ways and are often lived at a very shallow depth, that are searching for meaning and hope and truth? One of the participants at the synod had this image that for a relatively young person, everything's relative these days, they said sometimes the image that we give as a church is that of a bouncer. Arms folded, you shall not pass. When what people are looking for is an usher. Someone said, come this way, have a seat. Sometimes that harsh element of faith manifests itself. And that's why I think the gospel of the Good Samaritan is always a good corrective. The usher, the Good Samaritan, the face of compassion, the face of hope, is something that is actually what we can offer to our world and what people are looking for. One of the great joys of my life is to be involved a little bit with all those that are in the rite of Christian initiation of adults, especially in Lent, listening to their story about why they want to be baptized at Easter. One of the joys of going round for confirmation is to listen to a little bit of the story of faith in each of those places. There's a deep hunger there, which is not ideology. It's a hunger for God. We always know that that is put there by God. And people look to answer that hunger in so many different ways. We are uniquely placed to be people who not only are able to feed that hunger with the bread of life, but also with meaning, with hope that's somehow in hand's reach. It's not beyond us. So I think I delight that we have such a wonderful document that we need to absorb, as I think Julian said. It's not just, okay, we'll do this in the next 5 weeks and that'll be done. But this is an indication of where we're going. This is not only the roadmap, but it's also the vehicle by which we can travel. But we travel together on the way. And I guess if we are deeply attentive to all of those things that have been stirring in our heart, we recognize that there is a wonderful desire, that we want this to work because we know it is good. Because, as you know, God is good. So I again echo the wonderful thanks to our Vietnamese community for hosting us today with great generosity. It's a great a venue, and you wait for lunch. But I think I have longed for gatherings like this. We have often spoken about it. And my hope that this is just a beginning. It's only a comma after today. Because if we're going to model what we're doing, it's not just launching a document, great, lovely, tick, but this becomes the mode of being together as the church. So my hope for today, or one of them, is not only that we launch this, which we are, but also launch a way of being this together. Because it's often a great way of dismantling fear and suspicion, which when we stop talking, when we stop being church together, tend to build up. Because it's the imagined reality rather than the reality that... and when we sit down with people, there's something that is revealed, and it is God who is the ultimate host. So once again, thank you for being here. Thank you again. I really appreciate that we need to know our own history, and maybe that's one of the elements of what this document calls us to, because we have such a proud history, especially in South Australia, of responding to the needs, not just as Mary McKillop and Julian Tennyson Woods did, but to the needs of the 21st century, the needs of what the church is calling us to be the face of Christ for so many people. Today is a wonderful ability for us all, I think, to re-engage with that, to know that we're not alone. It's something we can do together. We have done it, we are doing it, and making what is already good just that little bit better. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Archbishop. And it's nice to start to hear some of the stories coming out of the Synod and to hear about your experience. And I think it's an inspiration, but also we know that we are already on that journey together. So thank you for that. Just a couple things to point out before morning tea. So we're going to take a break so you can refuel, stretch your legs, and wander the grounds. The church is open, as we mentioned before, if you want to have a look at. It's a beautiful, beautiful church, wonderful space. On your tables, there's another document, Drawn into the Joy of the Gospel. This document was launched about a month ago. We released it. Another piece that's been in process for about a year or a year and a half, and it's our diocesan statement on formation. And it's a guide, it's a vision. And as we're talking about being church together, and as the Archbishop mentioned, formation is what we do. And we're all involved in it, and we're all in need of it. It's part of our life as people of God and as caretakers of those who are being formed themselves. So this is a document that you can take home with you. And if you're in the Archdiocese, you're receiving these for your parish and for your school to look at with your communities. But it offers, I think, a very beautiful vision of what formation is. It gives us language, again, shared language. And it's about the formation for all of us, for every age, at every stage of life. But there's also the second half of the document talks about formation for those who have particular roles in the church, especially in leadership, which would include all of us in this space. So it's another opportunity to be in dialogue together about what it is to be church together. There's a workbook, a physical workbook that accompanies this, that's a reading guide and a reflection guide that you can work on in a group. So pastoral council, school board, maybe a parish council school board group, to walk through the document. There's another workbook that'll accompany it that'll be online, and that's an assessment of what you're doing already in your communities for formation. And then a third workbook which will help in the development and the implementation of formation opportunities in your own place. And so each of those will become available in the coming months and years. Anything else I should mention, James, about this? I think we're good. All right. Next, just want to mention those packs. So many of you have already picked up your resource packs. This would be a good time to do it, or you can do it before you leave at the end of the day. Every school and every parish community is being resourced with the documents that are on your table, with enough for people in leadership, as well as some other documents. So there are people at the back tables there to help you with those, to pick those up. And if you need assistance bringing them to your car, just let us know, because some of them are quite heavy. The other thing that we'd like to mention, so the Port Pirie Diocese the representatives from the schools, we know that you have to leave, so make sure you pick up your packs as well before you take off after morning tea. Now, finally, morning tea. If you would, the coffee cart is still here, so if you want a barista-made coffee, you can go back outside. Otherwise, there's a tea and coffee station back here. There's fruit and biscuits around, and then the toilets. And again, be sure to check out the church while you're here today. And we'll be back. We'll call you back in about 25 minutes.
If we could just invite people to take their places at their tables. Andrew, can you please be responsible for your paper? Thanks everyone. If we could please take our seats and we will continue moving through the morning. Or afternoon, depending on how long that takes. Sorry, I'm channeling today's conversation a little bit. Sarah.
I did try to, and they don't move. They just move
Yeah, I know.
like this. And I said, yeah, and you can't actually
Although I push it when Jill aren't there either.
Yes, I know. I know where Jill is. He's in the top. Here. Andrew's rounded him. I like his acronym.
Did I do that? I must have, because I was typing. I can't even remember doing that.
You have an alarm on your phone?
Well, I was just trying to find something, but my alarm is Nick Cave. And I don't know whether that'll come. Yeah, they can't hear though. Well, I can't do it any louder.
Yeah. We just start. Do the teacher clap. primary school teacher?
No, I actually don't. I'm one of those people that can't clap loudly. Thanks, everyone. We'll make a start. Please take your seats. Thank you. We understand that the lure of November sunshine, as beautiful as being church together is a little bit hard to compete with. For the remainder of this morning, we're going to do two things. We're really going to focus in on that area of activating principles for good practice. As Peter and I alluded to at the beginning, this was the area where the most energy was invested in the refresh of the document. And the way that we approached that was as a means of imagining and planning next steps in your school-parish relationship. So we're going to walk you through in a minute how we've imagined that in this part of the document. But one of the very first things that we realised when we sat down to review this section, to ensure that it was dialogical and invitational, that there was a place for deep listening and for sharing, for acknowledging the other, was that sometimes we make assumptions when we gather together with people that we feel we know well by face and role. But what can emerge from that is that we jump straight into the agenda and we don't provide spaces for storytelling. So we'd like to give an opportunity for a model of, with the people at your tables, how you might use your gatherings to provide space for this. So what we're asking is, in your shared community around your tables, with maybe 3 others, so if you can join in groups of roughly 3, introduce yourself again, if you know each other, by sharing what drew you to your role and something that continues to inspire you in that role. We're going to give you a good 6 or 7 minutes. We'll try and read the room. We want everyone to have the opportunity to share, and then we'll gather back together and we'll move through the principles themselves. So I invite you into sharing that. we're thinking that technology is and then for a bit, there's therapy in sharing. Obviously, so we need to factor that in. But we want to go for a long, really sit and.
Well, you could go from Chicago to LA on Route 66.
Yeah.
So take a car around.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Then you get you get to see
I
the
love a
life.
road trip too. You see things differently in that way.
Yeah. No,
or even the train.
Yes. Amtrak's a bit like taking a Greyhound bus, but it's.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, we'll call you back together. We are delighted that the conversations are continuing. It's a good sign. So we've talked a little bit about how this section of activating principles for good practice has started, but just to look at the introduction as we walk into this. The following themes of good practice are presented as a series of questions for discussion and dialogue. So it's different from what had existed previously, as we mentioned. A series of questions for discussion and dialogue, which first examine the current realities, then move to imaginative possibilities, and then action. For those of you who grew up in the Cardine movements or were connected through YCS, YCW, see, Judge, act. It's very Vatican II. It's very synodal. It's the response that we have, the path we take through discussing major things. Parish worshiping communities and schools are encouraged to enter into dialogue with an openness to engage in generative listening, imagining and acting and responding to one another.
So I'm going to go a little bit off script here, which is very uncommon, but I want to tell a little story as a way of introducing these activating principles for good practice. In 2008, I was working at St Francis de Sales College in Mount Barker. I was head of senior school in that year, and I was also a member of the Mount Barker Strathalbyn Catholic Parish, which I still am, and I was on the Parish Pastoral Council. By virtue of having those two relationships within the school, within the parish, I stepped up alongside my wife to help organise an experience and opportunity for young people within the school and also the parish more broadly to attend World Youth Day in Sydney. It was an amazing experience, accompanied some beautiful young people. It was an opportunity to be able to connect with parish. Now, the bit I want to tell, there's two distinct parts to the work that I did that there was great opportunity to bring together, but I didn't at the time. So I think it highlights some of the ways, if we look with fresh eyes, that there are opportunities that we don't envisage in the blinkers of our roles. So on one hand, I was gathering together a group of these young people. We were forming and preparing them for going on this experience. There was a group of somewhat boisterous Year 11 lads that stuck their hand up. And the question in my head was, were they looking for a pilgrimage or were they looking for an experience in Sydney? Nonetheless, we prepared and formed them as well as we could, and they were super excited to go. I remember just significant events in the parish in the lead up where the cross was carried from our school into the church by our young people. I can still visualise being there. It was incredibly powerful. On the other hand, in my role on Parish Pastoral Council, the Knights of the Southern Cross very generously decided that they would like to provide some funds, raise some funds to support the students going to reduce the costs that they were incurring. I was like, this is fantastic. So I worked with them. I went to sausage sizzles. We did all sorts. There was lots of Saturday afternoons at Bunnings taken up in the lead up, and they were very excited about what they were doing. So we had the experience, the money was provided, the community knew that those two, the school and the parish, the Knights of the Southern Cross, had contributed in these ways. When we returned, one of the things we decided to do, which in hindsight was one of the most beautiful experiences that I've ever been involved with through a school, was we organised a dinner for the students that attended and for the Knights of the Southern Cross, so that there could be an opportunity to thank for that contribution and to be able to hear the stories of what those young people experienced. Now, there was one lad in that group, if we go back to that group of Year 11 boys, and to protect the names of the innocent, I'm going to call him Pat. Sorry. Thanks, Archbishop. Pat was the one that I thought, I'm not sure why he's going. Really open to taking him, but he was the one, as we were getting on the plane, in the back of my head, I was going, how's this going to roll? Anyway, when we sat down for the dinner, before we'd even engaged in conversation, Pat and his grandfather, who was a member of the Knights of the Southern Cross, came up and said hello to each other. And all of a sudden I realised that neither of them knew. Well, the grandfather knew that Pat was going, but he'd never taken the opportunity to share with him that the Knights of the Southern Cross, an organisation that was a deep part of him, were providing money. I remember when Pat was talking about the experience and reflecting on how he had grown. His grandfather was crying, listening to it. It was such, and they embraced, and it was such a beautiful moment of being church together, where we'd missed the opportunity up until that point to connect the stories. So my learning from that, I need to be broader thinking and broader hearted than the thing in front of me at any particular moment. Small aside, I had my questions about Pat. Pat recently had a daughter. He's married. And I saw last week that on Facebook that he and his wife were celebrating the baptism of their daughter. So now I don't know whether those two experiences were connected. We can never know. But there is a great opportunity to be able to foster children, families, and young people in having a space in the church through the way that we're attentive in relationship. And that's what these activating principles for good practice are about. The cultivation of communities of hospitality. A theological understanding of hospitality as well as a relational understanding of hospitality. In our planning today, we wanted people to be able to engage in conversation. We also wanted you to get a good coffee when you got here. Those two things are equally important and they feed each other. And we did that with that dinner opportunity with the young people that went to World Youth Day and the Knights of the Southern Cross. Building a community of missionary leaders. What does this mean? Breaking down some of the language that blocks people from seeing themselves as these things. Hearing the experiences of where this has happened. Grounding formation in authentic dialogue. You can model and you can scaffold the dialogue that we don't necessarily provide space for. And dialogue, we know, quite often happens in the realm of hospitality. It happens in unlikely places. The Gospels teaches of Jesus's ability to be able to use meeting people where they're at. Imagining places of encounter. Where do we provide those safe spaces, those beautiful aesthetic spaces that shift our sense of understanding and transform us? Activating community through service, justice and advocacy. We know that regardless of someone's religious affiliation or experience, that this tugs at people. They're called into being more by their service in seeing need in others. And deepening a relationship through spiritual practices, prayer, liturgy and celebration.
We also wanted to highlight a local story, somebody who's been experiencing themselves. So I'd like to invite Father Kieran Gill, who is parish priest up at the Seven Hill and Clare parishes, and school principal Peter Shearer at, oh my gosh. Oh, I should just say St. Joseph's because it's like half the names of the schools in the diocese. Yeah, so right. So, thank you.
Thanks, Peter and Julian, and thanks for the opportunity to share something of our story of our parish and school partnership. I arrived at Seven Hill as parish priest last year and was welcomed into what's been a very long-standing and wide-ranging partnership between our parish and St. Joseph's School in Clare. As a entry point, I guess, into that partnership for families who are new to the school, we host a welcome event for new parents at the start of each year at Seven Hill. And at that event, we offer that as a hospitality experience for them and tell the story of the Wycott family and the Jesuits who first arrived in Australia 175 years ago this year. The Wycott family from Austria, they sold their farm, sold everything, funded 146 people to travel with them in search of better opportunities and freedom from political and religious instability in their homeland. And so we tell that story as a way to highlight our history of our parish and to welcome families into our community and help them to experience that hospitality. And at Seven Hill, we do host a range of events for our school community, a parish community, throughout each year. One thing that we're working on significantly at the moment is collaboration in our planning and our stewardship for our parish and our school, particularly at the moment with our parish hall in Clare, which has been operated by our school for a number of years and used as a learning space and a community space. Last year, our school opened a new hall, which is a magnificent new facility, not just for our students, but for our local community as well. And we were blessed to host the regional assembly there earlier this month with the collaborative involvement of our parish and our school community. And at the moment, in terms of our stewardship of our parish hall, our older building, we're working on formulating plans to redevelop the building and provide spaces that will maximise its use for student learning activities, for use by our school PNF, and also for use as a redeveloped parish office space and meeting space. So we collaborate in a wide range of areas, as I said, in our Sunday masses, our weekday masses, our monthly family mass, our liturgical ministries, our altar servers program, our sacramental program, engagement in local community events such as our Anzac Day services and Remembrance service on the weekend. Our school and parish, we have a regular class visit to one of our aged care homes, which happens once or twice a month under the leadership of our school staff and our parish priest. We have significant community events. Our parish and school fete is a major community event which welcomes prospective families to our school and to our parish. We have, as I mentioned, visits to Seven Hill for school retreats, community events. Our welcome function, our end-of-year concert is hosted at Seven Hill, and we collaborate with our retreat centre and Seven Hill Cellars Winery. And we support, our parish and school supports our Clare Valley Christian Outreach, which is a significant ecumenical outreach and support for people in the Clare Valley suffering from homelessness, poverty, domestic violence. So we feel that we are, in our partnership, seeking that communion, participation and mission, and Peter has done so much for so many years to support that as school principal, but as a very active member of our parish community as well. So I invite Peter to share something of his experience.
Don't want him to pinch my notes as well. Our Father's mentioned a lot of the nuts and bolts about what we do, how we do it, but really the most important part is why we do it. And the reason why we do it is through basically shared dialogue. It's communication, it's the listening. So the actions are all coming from what we're doing. And that's been the most important part. We have the shared wisdom, we have the shared skills, we have the shared resources. It's easy to lend a haul or share some resources, but it's why we're actually doing it. And we're about having the shared mission. Maybe it's because we're a rural setting, maybe because it's a smaller place, maybe because it's cheaper that if we're going to get our PA system, we ring up Father and say, well, we're getting our PA system, would you like yours looked at? Because it's cheaper. So those sort of things about economies of scale are very important, but they impact in a lot of other ways. And maybe they impact more because we're more about dialogue, we're more about conversation, we're more about working together. We don't have a huge number of people there. Maybe that's a good thing, because then if we're in a smaller group, we have to share each other's resources, we have to share each other's skills, we have to share each other's gifts and talents. Planning's a really big thing, so we go through and everything we do is with a purpose. So we actually state what our purpose is, what we're trying to achieve and how we're trying to achieve that. And we have the shared goals. It makes it so much easier to do. Father mentioned that we have a beginning of year welcome to our school, but we actually don't welcome to our school, we welcome to our school, which is part of a parish. Our parish is part of a bigger organisation. Our parish is part of a history. So we have our new parents who are very wide-eyed and not sure about what's going on about just coming to a new Catholic school, but they're actually being welcomed into the wider parish, and they hear the history of people travelling from on horseback up to to Darwin, Daly Rivers and that part of thing, about the history of what it means to go to St Joseph's School and what it means to be part of our Seven Hill Parish. So we acknowledge the past, we embrace the future. Probably one of the real parts, and Father Chris is here and I spoke to him earlier about that, it's about being on the same journey and understanding the roles that leadership take. And Father and I have good days and we have bad days, but the really good part that what we can do is we can actually support each other, because the role of being a leader, whether it be a school or a parish, has the same realities. So if Father's done a funeral of a young family or a young person, there is a genuine concern on my behalf of how is he going, how is he travelling, and he does that to me on a regular basis as well. So it's understanding the journey. If we're on the same journey, we're on the same mission, it makes it really easy to work together. Cheers.
Thank you, Father Kieran. Thank you, Peter. That worked out really well. Thank you. Yeah. What a great example. Great example. You'd think we prepared for this. I think your story and what your example, and I'm sure there's dozens of stories like that in this room, but it's about the effort, the time, and the commitment that's put into this, and it's mutual. I think what I heard, the highlight of your sharing, Kieran and Peter, is that it's mutual, it's reciprocal, that you are there together supporting one another on this journey of dialogue. And we know that's not always an equal partnership in every space. And sometimes it gets weighted one way or the other, but we still have to make the effort to go. And we know that sometimes other people need some prodding and support to help make that mutuality and that reciprocality and that respect more balanced. So our hope is that being church together supports that, and in those places where it's working really well, that it becomes a support tool, and in places where the effort is needed, that this becomes a pathway. So we're not going to go through each one of these. You could barely read it on the screen, but it's in front of you in your books. Each guiding, activating principle it has this format, and so we mentioned it already. We discuss. There's an overall question. We discuss the current reality. We dialogue the vision for the future, and we hone in on our commitment to action. And one of the things that we realized while developing these, the questions are rich, and you could spend an entire year discussing one of these questions. And maybe that's a way you might choose to do it. Let's look at cultivation of communities of hospitality, but maybe we're just going to look at, when we look at our communities, who is not here, why might they be legitimately included? How might they be legitimately included? That's a massive question, and it's a big one for us to answer. But that's looking at the first step, right? The reality. So if we look at that overarching question, the beginning one, so just in this first one, school and parish worshiping communities are called to engage in radical hospitality. Together, how might we broaden this practice of hospitality? Again, you could just spend time talking about that. But then we offer the step-by-step way of engaging that question more deeply, leading, hopefully, to a shared response or an action.
So what we're going to do now is give about 35 minutes to actually dive into this one of these activating principles and to have a conversation at your table. So I just want to acknowledge that some of you are at tables where there is a shared community with a representative from a school and a representative from a parish that are connected together. There's an opportunity, if that's the case at your table, to begin this conversation and have something that you can continue with the next time you have an opportunity to gather. If that's not the case at your table, this might be a more global, general conversation that picks up on your experiences in your parish that you then might reflect on and take back into your role. So the idea is this: in groups on your tables, select one of the activating principles that you are really passionate about and try to come to an agreement about which one you might spend some time diving into. Have a conversation about that examines the current realities in your community about that. And then move to some of the imaginative possibilities of what it could look like. What we would hope it would look like. What's our aspiration for the way that it would look or feel. And then, if there's time, move on to trying to name an action that will allow that to happen. So you've got about 30 minutes, which means that you could roughly split 10 by 10 by 10 and try and work through that process and use it as a way of unpacking and understanding one of those activating principles of good practice. Just before we do that, one of the things that Peter and I thought we might share in moving into this conversation is we wrote some affirmations. These are actually directed at ourselves about how we might want to enter in a spirit of dialogue. What might we need to do and acknowledge in ourselves to be open to listening fully and being present fully. So I'm just going to read these one by one, and I just ask you to consider in your heads and hearts how you might be this in the conversation that follows. As we enter this dialogue, we affirm in ourselves, I am interested in hearing from the other. I have something to share. My perspective is valued. The experience of the other is valid. I am open to change. So we invite you in that spirit to dive into one of those areas. In about 35 minutes, we'll call you back together. I'm just thinking, a truncated version of this, we could provide for parishes to offer with their communities. There's a really easy first resource. I mean, I reckon it only probably requires half the slides that are in there.
Yeah.
But
I think you're right.
we could probably send that out this week.
That's good. That's a good idea.
Do we somehow, I know we've got different distributions, which sometimes is complicated, but I'm thinking if we share it, if we send it to the principal and the parish priest, and then it becomes their, maybe it invites a dialogue about when and how can we do this in a shared way.
I think it's good. Somebody was asking about, I said, we've been doing this for a while. We've got inroads with each other. We know what they're doing. So where do we get to share that? I think it's a really
That's a great question.
Yeah. Well, we have talked about, do we have a website where things would sit? Or maybe it's more forums like this, Bishop Hutcherson. But just for opportunities there for people to actually, and I just thought actually, even things like the regional assemblies, Kieran mentioned, like that, those are spaces and places where these kind of
I reckon in those like things like the regional assemblies, I think it's fantastic. The localised conversation brings community together, as you named. I think the benefit, the thing about the diocese and the assembly last year that was really good is that people got to choose an area of passion and they got to have some input that stretched them. So I think having some private conversation like this is really powerful. Because otherwise, what happens is that people with be feeling the passion, they'll sit in that without moving outside.
yes. Well, that happened last year. Happened at the first assembly.
Yeah, and it's going to.
Yeah. But I think you're right. Like, I was even thinking about the method of spiritual conversation that we use at the Synod. We kind of use that at the first assembly, but that where you let people say what they need to say, and then everybody gets to think about it and respond to it. And then, but you're in a prayerful disposition while you're doing it. So you're doing these things.
Yeah.
But then at the end of that, you work towards a solution. I mean, it doesn't have to be as rigid as that, but there's those kind of spaces where you, because I think where we share slides or resources and we give people the opportunity to go do it on their own. This is what I've been talking about with our team. We might come up with a nice resource, but if we haven't shown people how to use it,
You need a skill facilitator. So maybe that's the first step next year, is we invite each parish and school to nominate someone to be prepared as a facilitator for this process.
you know what?
Or for it, sorry, I should
But actually, that person or team of people from a parish, that they then can become not just a facilitator for the school parish gathering, but they become the facilitator who is the youth themselves. That's interesting. But they become facilitators for anything that you
So maybe that's tied in with the COI and the reimagine the COI leadership as well. Maybe we can get students through to do this. So I'm looking at this podcast together with Parish-School today. I'm actually thinking for new teachers, there's actually it's a really succinct way to teach about the relationship with church and virtually being in school. I think it's really, I think we need to use it in that form.
absolutely. So I've been thinking a lot about. We're trying to work with the team to plan workshops and offerings for the next couple of years, especially and one of the things that I'm really hoping for, you mentioned this before, is I'd love more partnership between our when we offer training sessions.
Yes.
So we could model this, but also glean from each other's the expertise that is present. And it doesn't look at every scenario. One of the things I've been thinking of offering workshop, professional style workshops that how do you begin to understand the deeper way that we can do here? What you're saying,
I'm thinking of a whole day around radical hospitality.
yeah,
Radical hospitality. Because it does let's be honest about it. But we could pin so our outcomes that will skip. So through through our opportunities to engage with them, you know, there could be, and you would similarly, you would have people that would benefit from it. So I think there's great opportunity to be able to do some shared professional learning. You know, right down to things like our professional learning workshops. You know, because of COVID, we've had to shift those into what we call mini modules, which is rather than doing a full day, 6 hours. So if they choose 3 mini modules, they do them online, then they have to provide a reflection. And you have people in your team that have different skill sets that could actually fuel some input. It's really about provide some input in a digital way, provide a resource to engage with. They wouldn't have to laugh. But we could do that now too. There's no, but we're trying to build just hearing our voices, hearing other voices. Julie and Marcy is very generous in what they side. But for the time frame it's been, it's had the most hits. It hasn't, in the scheme of things, the time it's been. And people have to so there's an opportunity. Yes. This is what Andrew this is passion.
Let's just look at that. Look at the civil community work. Major focus on this concept of work. It's not just because it's not just us. Yes. And that they dovetail James's take just to see the conclusion. And so they're working together. There's groups of people that say conclusion on this particular work. So, and I think James would for students is that respect and excitement about it. So good. He is so much. I can tell. Just even from the outside, I can tell. I mean, this time is big. One aspect of the church is important.
So so I look at our team position next time. Mary, an experience in the past, I know her passion. Great relationships in terms of understanding about what's the best way. Because I think, and this isn't another thing, just when you look, how much teaching. So on the but I think there's a key word.
That's what I thought. It's always been my ministry alone. You and grandchild.
So, you know, I think there's an opportunity. And that's not as hard or as scary as it is from the outside. Yeah, so I think there's great opportunities. It's like a very exercise that I would say. I know that's what I'm looking at. It's almost like essentially what it does to me was like you've actually been that way the second time.
young people here. Wednesday, we set up rotating sessions. And Lauren what's up for table class. That's up for the scene. And they didn't see the table class when I finished. We felt so bad when we came in. It's good to hear. It's so cool. Just I'm reading these really good conversations, which is good. And you know what to use task about yesterday. Yeah. I think the tables no, I think it's, yeah. People know that see if they're here. As if they're here, yeah, that's a good idea.
very, you know, except for I had a principal just come in and she said, Julian, this is very hard. She said, my parish priest is speaking to school because he refuses to engage and he can't beat these things out. I said, okay, can you make it talk? Can we have coffee? Can we talk this through? I said, I've been there, but I do care to hear that story. But outside of those extreme examples, most of the reason why there's not an engagement spaces in about 32 or so. Because you're going to a board meeting, there's no space for that. Going to a parish pastoral council meeting, generally there's no space for that. So
Let's say
it's been
that.
really good.
Can you smell the food? We're going to wrap up here.
Do need, right at the end, do need to remind people to get hats.
Yeah.
And also, I might just remind my team if they could share, taking, because I don't know if I can take all those myself.
Yeah. All right, let's get. We'll move on. Stop it. Thank you so much for engaging in this practice of practice. So I hope this was a beneficial practice. Whether or not you stuck to the process probably doesn't really matter, but the fact that you're having conversations at the table, hopefully some of it tied into to some of the parish-school relationship, that'd be great. But a big part of this is just building relationship and building a mutual language and understanding of one another. And I think we've said that several times this morning. And we recognize that these kind of conversations don't always fit within the framework of a board meeting or a pastor council meeting, as we were just having this conversation. But you've got to set aside intentional time for these kind of conversations. Because, really, it could take up your entire board meeting, and then you wouldn't get to the finances, and we'd all be, where would we be? I don't know. I won't make a comment on that. That's not my area. But the ability to set aside time and intention for deep dialogue, deep conversation, I think is really important. And it shouldn't be an afterthought, but it should be at the front and center of this building of relationship. So when it comes to what are the next steps from here, what are the practical things that you can do? What are the practical things that we, from the organizational perspective, can do? I think there's a lot of things. So Father Kieran mentioned that the school and the parish were able to host the regional assembly. These regional assemblies are happening across the Archdiocese over this year and into next year, and they're one of the top topics that's being discussed at these regional assemblies is the parish-school relationship. This is an opportunity to enter into that dialogue at those regional assemblies. So I would really strongly encourage you to make sure that you're part of those conversations, if not part of the planning of those. And if you've already had your regional assembly, you can continue those on the way. Again, making this a priority, even if it's 20 minutes discussion, at your pastoral council meeting or your school board meeting, shared staff meetings, how are you engaging young people into these conversations? There's many opportunities to take even one question or one piece of one of those guiding or activating principles for good practice and incorporating those into an existing meeting or an existing thing that you're already doing. We've had lots of people asking, where can we give feedback? Tell other people what we're doing and share the resources that we're developing. Or where can we access the resources that are being developed by our diocese and the Catholic Education Office around these things that will help to foster this. So it's our intention to continue to develop supportive, responsive resources that help to move this process along, and so that it also stays in front of us as not an archaic document that gathers dust on the bookshelf, but something that's always in front of us that we can keep referring back to and building on. And so there's been talk about a centralized website. There's been talk about regional gatherings or neighbors of parishes and schools gathering together to talk and continue these conversations. And even, as the Archbishop said, let's do this more often. Let's get together and have these conversations and spend time together. So there's a commitment from the Archdiocese, from the Diocese of Port Pirie, from Catholic Education over both those dioceses to continue to support this. And we want to offer not just resources, but also our time and our physical and personal support where it's requested and where it would be helpful. So you can always call on our offices and on our personnel to be part of that, to assist in the building of these relationships and these processes. So we are here to support you along the way.
And in that spirit that we began that conversation, and there was such a beautiful tone attached to it. It sounded very directed as a trained teacher. I would have loved to hear that in my classroom if I'd given a group activity. We would love if you've managed to have a conversation with a shared community today, or if you have been able to discern in yourself something that you would like to take into your parish-school relationship. We've just got 3 reflection questions that I'm just going to invite you to consider, where you might want to pick up the conversation next time when you have the next opportunity. What have you learned about your shared community today? What have you learned about yourself? What vision might be emerging in you for being church together in new ways? Thank you for engaging with those. And again, we invite that there may be an opportunity the next time you gather, as we've named, that there's a power in providing space for sharing and knowing that might be the starting point to that.
So just before we leave today, we still have resource packs. So if you haven't yet picked up your resource pack, they're still on the tables, and parishes are over here on the right and schools over here on the left. If you're passing by a neighboring parish or a school and you have the ability to take an extra pack with you and you want to drop it off on the way for somebody who's missing today, we would greatly appreciate that. Or if your parish isn't here and you can take their resources, or you can take your school's resources, their representative isn't here, we would greatly appreciate some assistance in getting these out across the place. And so those are located at the back. A couple instructions about lunch, and then we're going to say some thank yous. So lunch today, gluten-free options are available around the room at each station, and so you'll see the stations as they come out. Vegan and vegetarian meals will be served from the back corner near the encounter sign. You can see the beautiful sign that says encounter. So hopefully you can find your lunch. This has been torture for me smelling the, the smells. It's gorgeous. And with that, we'd like to say a very special thank you, Monsignor Minh Tam and to Ben and Tiet and the whole Vietnamese Catholic community in Paracca. Massive thank you. Thank you. Your generosity, your hospitality, and the beauty of this space, such a gem and a hidden gem. So thank you so much for this, the opportunity to gather here. It's been just wonderful. We also want to say a very special thank you to those who were involved in the writing of Being Church Together over the years. It started with Deacon Tim Grohl and Jill Gallio visiting parishes and schools around the Archdiocese, and then Michael Vial from the Catholic Education Office got involved in the writing. And I remember when I was in the office there, in the youth office, seeing many interesting looking conversations between Deacon Tim and Michael Vial, heads together, staring. And if you've ever done any work with Michael, you know it was very intense, but it was done very well. But that was the seed for this, and for many of you who provided feedback over the last few years into that working document to help make it what it is today. And a very special thank you as well to Jill, Sarah, Julian, and I'll thank myself for being a part of it. But it was a wonderful opportunity, I think, for us to be engaged in that work. And so let's just thank all those who've been involved in that as well. You'll notice these documents are very beautiful. They've been designed incredibly well. They feel good to touch. They're not like our regular statements or documents, printed on rough paper. Not to say that what's done is not well, but we've intentionally made these to be long-lasting, to be beautiful and engaging, and we've had lots of compliments from people about how they look. And so I'd like to say a very special thank you to our graphic designer, who's been a big part of this, Dale Oria, who's sitting here. So thank you, Dale, for your assistance in that. Hopefully it makes it easier and more attractive for people to engage with. And I'm sorry that it's not Garamond font, Archbishop. At least it's not Comic Sans, so we're or Papyrus. What can you? The default church font. If you'd like more copies of these, there's digital copies available on the Archdiocesan website, and there's a link to where those are on the inside cover of both of those documents, so you can download those and print copies if you'd like. We do have a limited number of printed copies. We'll probably do another run if there's a big request for them. So let us know if you'd like more copies of these, either through the Catholic Identity and Mission team or through the Pastoral Services team in the Archdiocese, and we can provide that for you. And a massive thank you to each one of you for being here today and engaging so wonderfully in the conversations and for the prayerful dialogue that has taken place today. So we know this is a massive amount of time for everyone to be away from the office, away from your regular lives, and to be here together. And so your presence, your being here together, I think, is a testament to the dedication that we have as a diocese towards growing more and more this vision of being church together. So thank you very much, and please enjoy your lunch. And Father Dean, can I ask you to say grace for us and to lead us in grace? And so once again, thank you very much. A wonderful day, and we wish you safe travels back to your communities. We'll see you soon.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, we thank and praise you, Lord, for bringing us all here together, sharing our faith, sharing our commitment to mission, being your missionary leaders as church together in parish and schools. Thank you for this wonderful gathering. Thank you for all who have prepared it for us. Thank you for all those who have provided our food and our meals for us. Bless us, bless the food we're about to receive through Christ our Lord. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Thanks.